Hello, and welcome to 10-7 Off Duty Podcast. I'm Andrew Straley, EMTP. With me is Clyde.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. You need a new catchphrase, or just kind of a catchphrase of some sort.
Yeah, I'm not that creative.
Oh, come on. You can be somewhat creative if you want to be. You just put your mind to it, man. John is not here today because he is at home with the baby and the wiffy. We've got a couple of things to talk about because it seems like every time Clyde and I get together, we talk about guns and stuff like that. But
Let's just stay away from guns today. That way, it's not completely serious. We can actually have a little bit of fun.
I know. Well, there's one thing that I have to say. There's a couple of things that I have to say. Okay. Because
Before you start, I just want to say one thing.
okay.
Whoever emailed Andrew asking him where I was the last couple weeks, I really appreciate it. I don't know who you are, but that is really awesome that you guys have heard my voice, twice now?
Yeah.
And you're looking forward to me. Like, that's pretty cool.
Well, this is the thing that kind of sucks because we've all got our own lives. You know, you've got work, John's got work, I'm still off work, so that sucks. But it gives me a lot of free time to do other things. And yes, I am still have some applications in. And
He has stroked it 9 times today.
9? Just 9? You
Back
don't,
off, chump.
You don't want to know what happened in that chair earlier.
This is not amateur hour.
You got to get your numbers up. I've had a couple of interviews and stuff, and they've went pretty well. But unfortunately, it's kind of like a bit of an impasse because the services are expecting to add cars, but they have not added them yet. So it's like kind of just playing the waiting game, you know.
Wow.
It's
We
nice.
want you on deck, but you're not going to actually be on the field yet.
Right. Basically, their responses are, "Oh, you have this much experience. Oh, good. And you've been working in fairly busy services. Good. We would love to have you on our team. We're just waiting for the approval to add the car." So it's like, damn it. But yeah, so
That's shitty.
I know it sucks, but on the other side, like it gives me a little bit more time to keep studying for the critical care flight medic stuff. So that's kind of nice too.
At the end of the world, I'm going to have to find your ass because I don't know any other medics.
Actually, the 2 episodes ago, me and John were talking about my plans for the apocalypse. Yeah, I'm gonna.
Off camera, we're going to have to talk about that. Or off audio?
Yeah, I'm definitely ganking an ambulance and enough supplies. So I got into like
that shit, huh?
Hell yeah, you better believe it. So I actually got on this weird rabbit hole of news articles. There was a professor that shot himself with a Derringer in a college campus in the United States because nothing was being done enough to control the sale of AR-15s. How dumb do you have to be? He literally walked in, was talking to his students, went to the bathroom, shot himself with a Derringer in the arm, and he told the police afterwards, he's like, "No, I didn't want to kill myself. I just knew that nothing was being done quick enough." I'm like, how fucking stupid can you be?
Okay, since we're going to run down this rabbit hole, I guess I'm going to dive head on. For anybody listening that isn't quite sure of the statistics, really quick, 60% of gun crimes in America are suicide because unfortunately suicide is considered a crime.
Right.
80% of gun crimes in America are done with stolen firearms. And a stolen firearm is literally, the way they classify it, is a firearm that does not belong to you, that you commit a crime with. Okay. That's a large number. I mean, shit, 80% of everything. It's only 3% that are done with rifles. Was it 90%? It's 2% that are done with rifles. 97% are handguns.
Right.
So when you are trying to justify banning certain styles of weapons based solely on the number of gun crimes committed, you're not taking, it seems like you're not taking into consideration that 60% are suicide, and that is horrible as it is.
Right.
But if you took out all of those, every suicide, that number would drop drastically. And then
Right.
their argument is just
Well, and that's what we've talked about recently too, and I don't want to beat a dead horse because I feel like that's kind of what we're doing at some points here. But
yeah.
the last episode, my buddy Ryan was on, and he used to be a photographer and a editor for a news station locally, and we actually talked about. We've talked about it a couple of times, so like I said, this is probably going to be, hopefully this is going to be the last time I'll bring it up, but, all these articles are coming out, and it just, like, brings it back up, and I'm like, maybe I should talk about it again, but, beside the point, is that they only cover statistics and certain issues that point to a different narrative than what the actual truth is.
It's a specific narrative they're trying to follow.
And that's where I get annoyed. And that's actually kind of why I try to look a little bit deeper into the news articles than just taking everything at face value. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to tell you the story that they want to tell you. They're not going to give you the whole picture because it doesn't fulfill what they're wanting to fulfill.
No, absolutely not.
But and I think we've talked a little bit more than what I really wanted to talk about that, but I just had to bring that up because I'm like, dude, if you're a professor, why would you shoot yourself just to try to make somebody...
Honestly, you know what that story reminded me of, like, immediately?
What was that?
The DEA agent that shot himself in that gun safety course.
Yes.
That is old news, and most people know what it is. But I didn't know until recently. Evidently, the guy lost his job over that.
Really?
Fellow officers that were at the training course class, whatever it was, they were there as they weren't there as spectators. I think they were there as kind of like if he needed help with anything to give an example of something, they were there.
Right.
Evidently, they filed a report on it because technically it was a discharge of his weapon.
Right.
And he lost his job over it. It's like, he already got shot. Was it? I think it was his leg.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't remember if it was leg or if it went straight down into his foot.
Was that the one in where they were?
They were in a classroom.
But I didn't think it was a gun. Okay, gun safety for like children. Like
it was. I don't know if it was full on children, but he was basically trying to teach basic common sense gun.
Yeah, it looked like middle schoolers. Like,
yeah, and like he emptied it. Oh, he took the magazine out. I should say he didn't really empty it.
Right.
So he took the magazine out and then didn't check the chamber. Dude, you're a professional law enforcement officer. How?
Well, and that's what gets me is like every time that I handle a firearm, I don't care if it's been cleared by somebody else or not. I always check it myself.
I would rather insult somebody by checking them again than hurt somebody by just trusting their word.
But let's be honest. If you truly know what you're doing with a firearm, you are not going to be offended by that because you're like, all right, I cleared it, you clear it.
Exactly.
Know? And I've had this discussion before because a buddy of mine, he had a massive arsenal that he inherited from his father, and every time that he would show me one, like I'd watch him clear it, and then I'd clear it myself and just make sure. Mm-hmm. But he would show other people that had no training whatsoever, and they're just like, "Hey, look at this! Look what I'm like, duck."
Did you see the video on Facebook that's been popping around recently, where these two idiots were at a gun range and they decided to take selfies with the gun, and one dude held the gun up to his buddy's head? That instructor leapt on him like a cougar.
I wouldn't care if it was an instructor or not. Like, if I saw anybody doing that, like, I'd do the same thing. I'm just glad that
somebody was there with that kind of training. I mean, gladly it was the instructor who did have the authority to kick them out, because that is absolutely what needed to happen after that.
Did you see the video of a FBI agent who was at a nightclub and was trying to do some sort of a like backflip on the dance floor.
Ooh,
and
that is
his
a Negatory Ghost Rider.
and-
I've not seen that one.
he had apparently he had a concealed weapon in his waistband. So when he did a backflip, it didn't have retention. It fell out and discharged, like on the dance floor, and
No.
shot somebody in the leg. Yeah.
Well, that is a really nice pension and a really nice job out the window.
Yeah.
Gone.
I'm like, well, for one I mean, I understand that law enforcement have a little bit more leeway in when they can carry and when they can't carry, because
Right.
you know they stipulate whenever you get your CCW or anything like that, you can carry, but you can't be over the legal limit. For one, you can't carry in an establishment that is I think it's 80% alcohol sales or something like that.
Right.
So you can go into like
A restaurant, like
yeah.
a little Italian restaurant that serves wine, but you couldn't go into a bar.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, if the main food sales are, fried
Alcohol.
pickles, or cheese sticks, you can't go in there.
Do you guys sell food here? Apple pie moonshine.
All right then, sounds like food to me.
I've got to leave.
America.
I'll be back though.
But I will say that I just find it hilarious. Well, not hilarious. A little hilarious that this guy, if he has any experience, and you would think if you're FBI that you would have
Right?
at least years enough to know what's going on.
See, what don't they have to go through like an extensive training process? Like, I don't know if Quantico is still their training facility.
I think it
But-
is, yeah.
I mean, I've heard stories about that place. Like, I mean, obviously, I'm not into law enforcement like that. Their training academy, from what I've heard, makes any police department's training academy look like a kindergarten
Well,
class.
and I think you're actually, if you're specifically an FBI agent, you have to have X amount of years in
law enforcement in general, yeah.
I know that they do actually hire medics and then train them as
Right.
FBI.
Mhm.
That you don't have to have the law enforcement background, but it's nice to have.
Yeah, but then your job's going to be a little different. I doubt. I mean, I doubt they're going to be sending you out into the field with just medics. I mean, there's probably going to be
It's like
Yeah.
it's like a higher version of a SWAT medic. Where
Okay, that's pretty cool
Yeah.
actually.
I've looked into a whole lot of these things recently, and I'm still looking into doing contract medic. Like,
You really have had a lot of time on
I
your hands,
have,
huh?
yeah.
YouTube rabbit hole. Here we go.
Right. Actually, to be honest, like
I got my Slim Jims and Powerade. I'm good to go.
the biggest thing that I'm looking into, if I don't get something local, is doing contract medic and going overseas for 3-6 months and then coming back, and I have my entire year paid for because it's all tax free. And once you go overseas, all that money is tax free.
Really?
So it's one thing that I'm kind of like, I really want to do that.
The money sounds nice.
the money
and
sounds
experience
great,
sounds nice.
but then leaving for 6 months, that's what sucks.
yeah.
But then again, I've always gotten one of my favorite partners that I've ever had was, former Marine, that dealt with explosives. The dogs are making an appearance on this episode.
Yeah, they are.
So, yeah, that's just a couple of things that I was looking into. And, yeah, it's kind of scary, but honestly, a lot of the, like, contract medic stuff that I've been looking into is, like, Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Because princes will, if you have experience with, like, heavy 911 service, they will hire you for 3-6 months, whatever, and you basically just follow their family around, and if anybody has a medical emergency, you treat them, and then you just basically wait for whatever transporting service, or they put you in the back of their Escalade over in Dubai, and then you just treat on the way to the hospital. I mean, it's nuts. The way that they do things is just absolutely crazy over there.
That sounds scary, to be honest. Like, it sounds to me like I got nothing, dude.
Well, see, the other nice thing too is, from what I've read, since it's not the United States, you basically take anything with you that you feel like you would need in that situation. Because they don't really have as strict of laws. I mean, certain laws are very strict. Like in Dubai, I don't know if you know this. Do you know why there are so many just abandoned Ferraris, Lamborghinis, BMWs, like expensive cars? Do you know why there's so many abandoned cars over there?
I had no idea that there were that many abandoned expensive cars over there.
Yeah, you can. There are actually lots and lots and lots full of just BMWs, Lamborghinis, Ferraris,
Why?
Aston Martins, because in Dubai, the offense of reneging on any loan of any kind is punishable by death. So, say you have, you're a prince or whatever, or you're just a person over there and you have a lot of money, well, you buy one of these expensive cars, well, one day your company shuts down or, something happens where you can't make that payment. That's considered reneging on, an investment of some sort. Or theft, actually, because they don't have anything like bankruptcy over there. Mm-hmm. So what they'll do is they'll park the car and then get out of Dodge before they actually do default on that loan, and they'll skip the country. If they tried to load it up on like an aircraft or a ship or something, it would draw attention to them, so they just leave it where it is and just leave.
No shit.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
That is nuts.
Yeah. That was one of the laws that I'm like, that kind of sucks,
I mean, it takes all kinds to make up the world, man, but holy shit, that's just nuts.
Well, in Dubai, their entire thing is because, Dubai is a man-made island.
I didn't know that.
Dubai did not exist. Dubai was made. They literally shipped sand in and made their own island, and they continually expand that island to make Dubai what it has become. And actually, if you look at an overhead, I think it's Dubai. If you look at an overhead shot of Dubai, it's shaped like a palm tree.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, the one thing that I was reading was, and I know a couple of people, or vicariously know a couple of people who have done contract medic stuff. Mostly they've done Iraq, Afghanistan, war zone areas. And I need to ask, somebody who's done some of this like higher profile stuff. From what I've read, yeah, you ship your weapons over there, ship your body armor over there, and then, you just take with you what you need for yourself, and then they will give you whatever drugs that you say you need, whatever medical supplies, basically just getting one of the, 3 or 4 Escalades that they have, and you just follow the family the entire time. And if something happens, something sketchy happens, you just treat until you get to a hospital or like Medivac shows up or something like that. I think that would be awesome, though. But the thing is you're also traveling all over the world with the family as well. Because one guy that I read about, his contract was to follow a prince, and they were going on a world cruise, so on their yacht. So he took all of his stuff, put it on the yacht, and he was just on the yacht for 6 months. Basically, he saw, most of the world that you could see by sea. So it was...
That'd be terrifying for me.
Really? You don't like water?
I can't swim.
Really?
Yeah, I cannot swim. I float like a rock.
Really?
Yeah, no, dude. If you put me on a boat in the middle of the ocean, I'm like, no, They're like, we need you to do CPR. Yeah, drag her in a little bit.
See, I'm a certified diver too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. Well, I can find the bottom of whatever body of water I'm in real fast.
Well, you know what the nice thing about being a diver is? You have
nothing.
You have a backpack that makes you float anyway. So,
well, okay. Let me rephrase that. I've got a kind of a fear of water because
my dad has that, which is weird.
Whenever I'm completely submerged in water,
you can't breathe.
Well, it's not the fact that I can't breathe. It's the fact that I can't breathe mixed with the fact that I can feel the water all around me. And I know that sounds, I'm just stating the obvious, but a hint of claustrophobia kicks in.
Really?
And
you would not
then
make a good fireman.
Panic.
He would not make a good fireman.
It's only when I'm submerged in water.
Really?
Because I was actually going through firefighter training. And I absolutely love donning and doffing the equipment and doing all of the
Did you do the smoke evolutions too? You know, where they like actually do like a smoke house, like actually
Oh yeah.
put the fire in.
I was the body that they had to drag up through the roof because I was the smallest guy in the class.
Nice.
Yeah. Some of those big guys, it was just show because
Right.
they almost dropped me like 3 times.
Right.
And they waited till I was like at the ceiling, which was in the building we have here. You've probably seen it.
4? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the
Station
training center.
4?
Yeah.
Yeah, the floor to ceiling, that's a good, I would guess, between 9 and 12 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're at the ceiling, almost through that little hole they're trying to drag you up through, and then you feel the rope just jerk and you slide back down 3 feet, you're like, oh God.
Yeah, dude. Extrication was one of my favorite classes, like especially from Fire Academy. It was because they taught us, you know, how to extricate using a charged hose line. So you would cut the water off at a certain point, shove it down a hole to where the firefighter was, and then the firefighter would literally hold onto the hose, like backpack the hose, and then they would charge the line again, which would stiffen it up, and then it would just basically lift itself through the hole. It was great. It was awesome.
Who came up with that? Because that is genius.
I know.
Like,
A lot of these, coming from a fire background, it's genius, but I know that a lot of these were things that came about over the years from, you know,
horrible things happening.
bad situations.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you hear, and I've been actually a part of 2 firefighter down calls, and the worst ones were one of them was a fully involved structure that I was told to go vent the roof. There was no roof left. Like, I got to the top and I'm looking over and there's just flames shooting through. I'm like, well, self vent.
Yeah. One of my instructors, I think you actually said you were you knew him. I'm not going to say his last name. I'll say his first name, Tim.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was big on freelancing. He hated it. And for anybody out there who doesn't understand what freelancing is when it comes to firefighting, it is literally where you just disregard what your commanding officer would say
Right.
and just do your own thing. You cannot do that when you're fighting a fire, because
You shouldn't do that no matter what you're doing, to be honest, you know.
you shouldn't. Yeah, exactly. But when you're going against something, this is how I've always viewed it. When you're literally going against something that is just there to destroy everything around it, that doesn't have a conscience, it's not sentient at all, but it's going to destroy everything.
Right.
You cannot just do it your own thing, because you're going to get somebody else hurt. And that's what happened to him. Some young buck decided that they were going to take one of the lines and start shooting through a window.
Right.
Start spraying through a window because they're like, oh, there's a fire right there. It was a hallway.
Right.
There was a window on both sides of the hallway. It went through one window, out the other window, and blew glass right into his face. That's where all the scars on his face came from.
Really?
Yeah, he got pretty much shot in the face with glass at however much pressure was in that line.
Right.
And he was livid, like to the point where he wanted to go after the guy, but they made him lay back down so they could take care of him. They had to call EMTs in, all that. Like,
I also, and I'm not going to call the guy out either, but I do know, because I was adjacent to this call, was one call.
that one?
No.
okay.
To a call where he was venting a roof and he wasn't paying attention, and the K-12 saw kick back up and cut him in the head.
oh no.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, the K-12 is basically a giant circular saw that's run off of a gas motor.
Yeah, cut through pretty much on par with the jaws of life.
Yeah. So he was a cool guy. He was a good trainer. I will put that out there. Giant dick in real life, but you know, he was a good trainer. And I worked in the same system where he worked. And honestly, the biggest issue was it didn't matter what, as a paramedic, it didn't matter that you were the medic on scene. He wanted to take control of the call, which I don't agree with whatsoever.
No.
And if it's a medical call and I'm there, let me treat my patient. Don't tell me how I'm treating my patient, because, you know, yes, you've been a medic for years, but maybe I see something you don't, and I'm the one taking him to the hospital. Unless you want to put him in the back of your big red truck and drive him to the hospital yourself, let me do my job.
Yeah, it's not like you're showing up to the scene and going, oh, well, hey, spray here or spray there.
Right.
Like, no, you do your job, let me do mine. It's just a respect thing. And we're both professionals. I'll take care of this. You take care of that.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the first few episodes we were talking about that, like that, for new medics, or new EMTs, anybody who's new in the field of EMS, make sure that you give respect, but don't just lay down for somebody who's wanting to tell you what to do. It doesn't matter if it's your partner or whatever, just make sure that you do know what you're talking about at that time, because you don't want to, tell somebody something that is wrong and be adamant about it. You
Right.
have to be humble enough to learn from the people you're around, but you also have to be confident enough not to lose what you know because of somebody else.
Right.
And that happens way too much.
It's like, what's the biggest quote I've ever heard, especially when I was in correction, is remember your training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when people get into a stressful situation, that's the first thing that goes, unfortunately, is they forget every bit of their training and they start going off of reflex.
Right.
And that's why whatever kind of first responder training or job field you're in, that is why you train so much. It's just like any kind of martial art, it becomes muscle memory.
Right.
So if you do get put in a situation where your brain shuts down, unfortunately, because it does happen, it does, even to the best of them, it does happen.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
At least then your muscle memory takes over and you're doing what you still need to do without you even realizing you're doing it.
Yeah. And here's something that, because I've been working real hard on this this cover song for Code Green campaign, which editing a podcast is not that hard now that I've been doing it, for this long. But editing music is an entirely different beast, because...
Let me say something on both of those.
Sure.
For somebody who is nowhere near tech savvy at all, like literally I have a hard time with my phone most days.
Right.
What you do is magic. In my head, it's magic. It's just like, he pushed a button. You might as well be fucking Harry Potter.
But the thing is like I'm trying to get these video clips put together to go along with the song, to kind of prove the point that I'm, wanting to make, that, everyone goes through stress. Everyone, needs help from time to time. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
No.
So one of the things that I actually saw was a post. I can't remember where it was, and it's lost in the abyss of all these links that I have up on my computer right now. But basically, what it was saying was that and if I get this statistic wrong, I'm sorry, but I think it was like 42% of firefighter-related injuries were involving poor on-scene actions. So basically, they forgot all their training. So all the... Bonk.
That was an accident.
So all 42% of the injuries on duty were because of forgetting what they were trained to do. So the big statement that was made was train like you work and work like you train.
Mm-hmm.
My big thing is, as a medic, if I have the time when I'm on duty, I still go to a training dummy and start intubations and, do these things that, honestly can wane over time if you don't do enough of them.
Right.
Because they're important.
Yeah.
The important skills that you're going to do, either as a firefighter or a medic, do them and train on them so that way you don't forget whenever the time comes where you have to do it, life or death situation.
See, when I was in high school, I was on the wrestling team, and I got a lot of crap about that as I got older because the area we live in is not exactly a wrestling town. Got a lot of crap for that. But that was one of the ones I would get. But my wrestling coach, who in my opinion is one of the greatest coaches there is, he wasn't just training us to be wrestlers. He was training us to be grown men.
Right.
Because unfortunately, a lot of kids that have nothing other than athletics don't have a strong male figure in their life. Now, myself, I didn't meet my father till I was 19. So he kind of took that place a little bit.
Right, yeah.
And there are 2 quotes that he said that stuck with me to this day. And I plan to raise my son following at least those 2 quotes. One of them, you reminded me of, was when you said, train like you work, work like you train.
Right.
He would push us really hard in practice all the time, like really hard. We messed up, we were running. Like, he was like old school football coach from the 70s.
Yeah.
That was him. And we actually had one guy who was kind of mouthy, and he ends up saying, he's like, why are you always pushing us this hard? Our matches aren't even this hard. He looked at me and said, exactly. If your practice is harder than the actual match,
Right.
you have no excuse to lose. And that stuck with me. Like, if you train and you practice harder than the situation requires, then you'll be fine when you get into a real life situation.
Oh yeah, totally.
Another one was, we don't make excuses, we make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's a good one. I live my life by that. I don't like making excuses for my actions. I'm like, if something doesn't happen, or something might look like it's not going to happen that I'm supposed to get done,
Right.
it's gonna get done. I ain't making an excuse why I didn't do it.
Well, see, my thing is too, and this might not be super popular, but don't be afraid to fail, because whenever you fail, that's how you learn.
Yeah.
If you fail at something, ask help from other people around you that can give you a little insight into other things. And I kind of pulling back to what I was saying before, for like new EMTs, new medics, understand that what you've learned in class is national standard curriculum. Like, this is nationally taught. If you're taking a class, they're going to teach everyone exactly the same. There are some of us, or even people older than me, that have learned things over the years that they don't teach you in class. And whenever you take the class, you're basically taking it to pass a test. So once you pass that test, realize that yes, this is the information that you need to know, but learn from the people that have been doing it for years.
Because there are certain situations you cannot learn from a book. You will not know them until you are in that situation. Like, most of those guys had to learn the hard way. Guess what, Bucky? You're going to have to learn the hard way too.
Oh, yeah. Man. And, man, one of the creepiest calls I ever went on that ended up being not creepy at all, but just the situation it was in, was we got called for unknown medical. And if you're an EMT or a medic, you know that unknown medical can either be nothing or it can be
something horrible,
something really, really bad. And it was unfortunately in a bad part of town, where half the streets are all blocked off and you can't get through. Mm-hmm. So you have to like try to weasel your way through all the blocked off streets to get to the streets that you need to be on like the right side of it, and pull up. And literally all we see is a wheelchair ramp with no lights on in the house whatsoever.
Oh, no.
So, and it was a rundown, bad part of town, kind of run down a house. You could tell that they hadn't mowed the lawn in probably a month or so. And it's like, okay, is this house abandoned? Is there really something going on here? What's going on? And it was one of those situations where my partner at the time had just passed his medic class, and he had been in EMS for maybe a year and a half, 2 years or something like that. Like, he, instead of doing the eye thing like I did, he just went straight from basic to medic, and he was all gung-ho, and he's like grabbing the bag, and he's like walking up, and I'm grabbed the back of his shirt. I'm like, hold on a minute, because this doesn't look right.
Yeah, you're stuck in the call and not seeing the situation.
Yeah, exactly. That tunnel vision. Avoid tunnel vision, kids. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Avoid the tunnel vision.
Yeah.
See the whole picture, not just one point. Because I'd been doing it for, I think this was like my 5th or 6th year or something like that at this point. And like, I'm, taking my time, and I'm looking around, trying to like look on the sides of the house, looking at, the whole situation, trying to see what's up the street, what's down the street, and because there were no lights on this street either. So you're like, And
all it takes is some dark clothing, and you're blending right into the shadows.
Exactly. And it was one of those where, of course there's a window right next to the front door, and he was knock, 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 hello, ambulance, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, hold on. You stay on that side of the window. I'm going to go up to the door, and I'm going to stay on this side of the window, and I'm going to knock. And if we don't hear anything, then we're fine. Or, if somebody answers the door, we're fine. But if, something goes through the window, just book it. I'll bail over the side of the porch or whatever. But, just make sure. Situational awareness is something that cannot be trained. Because every scenario that you run as an EMT is scene safety, BSI, And unfortunately, we take it for granted because, you go to a classroom setting and you're like, all right, well, scene safety, BSI. Okay, scene safe. You have your safety equipment on. That is taken for granted because we run up to, or not we, but some of us run up to scenes and go, well, scene's safe because I'm here. No. But honestly, it was a sick person. It was somebody who was in an electric wheelchair, was a paraplegic, couldn't really do anything for themselves anyway. They had family members there that were concerned because of, X, Y, and Z. It was fine, but just the situation itself gave you that bad vibe.
It's because a lot of things people don't understand is while being a medic, I'm not a medic. Full disclosure on that too. I'm sure the people listening have already understood that.
OP? Oh.
Yeah. No, I'm not a medic. I've actually had a couple of friends who've gone through medic training. They're not full-on medics yet, but they've gone through medic training. And they've told me that one thing that they stressed was in the day and age we live in now, some people just hate the uniform. Right. It doesn't matter what uniform it is.
Yep.
They just hate the uniform. So there's every chance there could be a false emergency call with the intent of causing harm to somebody in EMS.
Oh yeah.
To that ambulance driver, to the medic, just in general causing harm to them.
It's EMT, not ambulance driver. I'm sorry, I've got to correct you.
I apologize. And for everyone else I offended out there with that slip, causing any harm to that.
What are you,
EMT.
a nursing home nurse? Stop that.
But there are people out there that just want to cause harm to the uniform.
Right.
They don't care what the uniform represents. You're there to help somebody.
Right.
They don't care.
And the unfortunate thing is too, because I've been in EMS long enough that I, whenever some of these Black Lives Matter stuff and all this was going down hardcore, they would tell us, the state would actually write out a report that said, make sure that you're checking everything, and if you don't feel safe, leave. Because they were getting threats that it didn't matter what the situation was. They just wanted to take out the first responders before anything else. And in any situation that is a true terrorist, threat, they want to take out the first responders first. Yeah. Because what's going to happen is, they'll call in a false call, take out the first responders, and then do what they want to do. Because if there's no first responders to respond to it, they can carry out anything they want to. And whether it be police, fire, and EMS. And this is the thing that I find difficult is many of the fire departments that I've worked with, they've got these hard-charging guys who just go into any situation, even if it sounds sketchy, because I guess they feel bulletproof, or they don't want to call for PD to help or anything like that. And I've told this story before, is one of the calls that I went on quite a few years ago. I was in medic class. We responded with fire department. We didn't even respond with PD. It wasn't a sketchy sounding call at all. It was just a sick person. This dude called, and I've told this story before, so if you guys are hearing it for a second time, I'm sorry. But we were called out for a sick person. This guy called, had his son there. His dad, they hadn't heard from in a couple of days, but he'd been to the hospital, had been sick, so they were worried. Didn't have a key to his house or anything like that. Basically, they just called 911 and goes, hey, my dad's been sick, we're worried about him, we can't get a hold of him, blah, blah, blah. Well, as the fire department's trying to force the side door, I'm looking through the front door, like the glass of the front door, and I can see this guy coming out of a room at the side of the house with a shotgun. And literally all I do is just yell, shotgun, and the fire department scatters. My partner leaves, and before I can even do anything, the front door opens, and I've got a shotgun pointed directly at my face, and I've got a plate glass window between me and him, so it's not like I can just grab it or something. I can't do anything. So my response was I grab the cot, throw it into the window, and book it behind the ambulance. And that was one of those situations where it's like, it's not even a sketchy, it was broad daylight. It wasn't even middle of the night. It was just broad daylight. And, that could have been the last thing anybody ever heard from me.
Imagine if it was in the middle of the night, man, you couldn't see him.
Exactly. Luckily, I got on, and here's the bad thing about dispatch, in my opinion. The company I was working for at the time didn't have direct 911 dispatch. The 911 call would come through, but our radios would just go to our dispatch. And if you wanted to talk to 911, it went through our dispatch, and then our dispatch had to call 911 or the dispatch center. So it was like a bad game of telephone, because I got on the radio and I called, literally grabbed the radio and I go, "Get me police here now." And then that was all I said. Well, the dispatcher at the time came back with, "Well, can you let us know what you need PD for?" And I just literally grabbed it and I went, "Gun," and then that was it. About 2 seconds later, there were 8 cop cars, all with ARs out, surrounding the place. So
go big or go home.
Exactly. And it was one of those situations where it's like, that could have went bad very quickly, because the dude, yes, he'd been sick, and he was sick at the time. He had a fever, probably wasn't in his right mind. But in my opinion, and actually, my issue is he said that he didn't know that it was first responders. But I'm like, you've got a fire truck and an ambulance sitting right in front of your house with lights on.
When somebody, I'm not defending the guy, but when somebody is, sorry,
you're fine.
When somebody's that far gone, if they're that lethargic, he may not even noticed it. He may have had tunnel vision on somebody poking their head through his window.
Right, understandable. And honestly, when he came out, it was literally hearing a Halligan bar and an axe trying to break into his back door. Yeah. Which I don't blame him for that at all. I honestly don't. But, once that door opens and you see a guy in a uniform standing there, yes, could be far gone, but honestly, somebody's got to be able to, be that. And I hope he didn't get in trouble for it. I honestly don't. I honestly hope he didn't. There are some people that have done things that I do hope they got in trouble for, but didn't. But yeah, I don't blame the guy. I'm just saying, watch your situation, watch your surroundings, and make sure that you, can find the hazard. That being said, here's another thing that I saw, and this came from a UK news source, and I told you about this yesterday.
Yeah, you did.
Seriously. It sucks. But apparently, according to a news article, 25% of millennials say they have PTSD from the 2016 election. All right.
I'm going to say this real quick. They have to be talking about college students or something. Because I'm a millennial and I was never asked.
Right. And I think they probably did I read the article and I just shook my head the entire time, so I might have missed a couple of words. But honestly, it's just like, okay, 25%. These are the same people who are eating Tide Pods and snorting condoms. I mean, seriously. So, and I'm 30 years old, and I'm probably, considered a quote-unquote millennial.
Yeah, I think you are until you're like 36 or something like that, 35.
Really?
Something like that.
But I think the issue is that, we've created this generation, and I sound like an old man.
I sound like told they're special?
Not only special, but that no matter what opinion they have, it matters. No, it doesn't. Unless you can conceive and form a valid thought, it doesn't fucking matter.
Like, if your opinion lacks any logic behind it, even fallible logic, I will accept as long as you had some kind of logic. I'm like, I don't agree with your opinion, but everyone has a right to it.
Right.
Another thing I think has been mistaken is people automatically assume opinion means that you're right. No.
Right.
No. It just means that's the way you see a situation.
Damn.
He almost took himself out with his own mic. Like, I would have had to film the show by myself. And then all you hear is
Hi,
clicking.
you guys.
Then all you'd hear is clicking and clack as I'm trying to figure out how to stop the recording.
I agree with that opinion, but I also think that the 25% of millennials that have said this don't understand true trauma at all.
No, absolutely not.
I think that what they are gauging as trauma is the fact that they got offended by something and that just upsets them.
Right.
And like I said, my favorite partner I ever had was a former Marine. His wife was a former Marine. I actually worked with a couple of former Army snipers, worked with some Special Forces Army guys, and these guys, we would
legitimate
well,
PTSD.
well, and we would talk about things, and until you have had something truly, truly traumatic, and I'm not going to be that guy that goes, well, just because your trauma is not my trauma doesn't mean it's not trauma. What I'm going to say is that I think that term is taken way too lightly these days.
See, it is. Like, there was a time when it wasn't taken heavy enough.
Right.
And I'm just going to say what I'm going to say, and then you can decide what you think I was trying to say with that first sentence. Okay. There was a time when people would automatically associate PTSD with strictly a law enforcement or military thing.
I don't even think they would call it law enforcement. I think it was just strictly
military
because it started with what? Shell shock, then battle fatigue, and then PTSD.
Yes. And then it started rolling over into everyday law enforcement because, I'm saying that if you're a rookie cop, right, and your first call, your partner who's been on the force for 17 years happens to get shot, you're probably experiencing a little bit of PTSD from that because at that point in time, you're kind of looking at this guy like, okay, he's going to be able to handle the situation. If I can't, he's down. What do I do? Mm-hmm. Now, what people don't seem to understand is that can roll over into civilian life too. I've actually met people who had PTSD. A friend of mine, actually, I'm not going to say his name. I'm not really going to say what his whole situation was. I will say that while he was drunk, he got into a fight and he was jumped, stabbed something like 27 times.
Dude.
Yeah. He was in ICU for 3 months. His upper body is still riddled in scars the width of a quarter and the probably 2 inches long, all over the place. He was absolutely shanked because, evidently the guys didn't use actual knives. Like, I think 2 of them had actual knives. He was jumped by 5 guys. Some of them just had sharp pieces of metal. They had prison shanks on the street.
Right, yeah.
Like,
anything can be a weapon if you try hard enough.
Exactly. And for months afterward, if he saw somebody that resembled one of the guys that jumped him,
right,
he would start shaking. He would get jittery. Like, if he saw a knife that was too sharp, he would start shaking, get jittery. Right. Like, he would start showing all the signs of somebody going through PTSD, holding on for dear life, just trying to stay calm. Right. Like, and he would have to separate himself from people, especially if he was at work and something happened, because I worked with the guy. He would have to separate himself for a few seconds, pull himself together, and he was one of the strongest people I ever met because the few times I saw him go into, a panic attack, he was able to pull himself through it.
Right. And
that takes strength. That really does.
Yeah.
But just because somebody got elected that you do not care for, that does not constitute PTSD.
I'm gonna say yes. I agree with you 100% because I have not agreed with a lot of things that a lot of elected officials recently or prior to have done. But
no,
it doesn't affect my life because, and this is not a political podcast, so this is going to be very short, very sweet. the president has very little power to do something that the founding fathers haven't found a way to make sure that they are held accountable to.
Yeah.
And that's my statement on that. So just because you don't like a guy doesn't mean that they're going to change your life.
Exactly. Like if you don't like him, be pissed off the fact he got elected. Whatever. Make sure your ass votes in the next election. Then.
Yeah.
Especially for the few people I've met that are griping and pissing and moaning about the whole thing, that didn't even vote.
Yeah. If you don't vote, you don't have the right to bitch about it.
No, you don't. Me, I personally voted third party. I didn't like either candidate.
Right.
And I've been told many times that I threw my vote away. In my opinion, I voted for the guy that I thought was going to be best.
Right. Well, and my theory in that is, you know, why do we only have two major political parties? Because, you know, you can have somebody that's, you know, very good that no one's going to vote for because they're not part of the two big
exactly
parties.
Like that's actually going on in our state elections coming up in a couple of weeks from now. I don't know about everyone else's state, but at the state we're living in, the two main guys are both fucking jokes, and I hate both of them. And if anybody's narrowed down where we're located, you know who I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, I've talked about Chicago. I think it's pretty easy to figure it out.
Yeah.
But the other side of that coin too is we also don't have a lot of good this day and age. We don't have a lot of good choices.
No, we don't have a JFK.
You know,
we don't have an Abraham Lincoln. We don't.
Right.
We have.
You know who I would have voted for in this state? Because I remember a year ago I saw a post that this guy was going to run for governor of our state, and I would have done it. He was an ex-Navy SEAL, and he was 23 years old. But I'm gonna get off this.
Yeah, let's get off politics. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, and you know, you wanted to. We put police and military into that PTSD category,
yeah.
But in the last 4 years, and like I said, I talked about this a little bit in some of the stuff that I'm doing for this Code Green campaign thing. Is I've done a lot of research, way more than I probably should have. But this is my big statement for this whole PTSD thing is I've seen the statistics on this, and I'm not going to pull them up because they're buried in, you know, all this stuff that I'm, you know, researching and all this for the video, is that between fire and EMS, the cases of PTSD related suicide is 3 times greater than it is with line of duty death per year. So yeah, that's one of the things that I'm just like, sucks.
Yes, it does.
Because I think that was a large part that was missed. And this is not gonna. I don't want this to be like a poor pitiful me thing. I want this to be kind of like a informational thing. So I was also going to talk about the fact that I was at a local grocery store yesterday, and I saw something that bothers me to no fucking end, and I hate this when it happens.
Fat person on some little legs.
They weren't all that fat. It was just this self-entitlement thing has gone way too far, because I see people that are riding around and like
the little scooters at the grocery store.
Yes. Why in the if you can get up. All right, I'm gonna put this out there. These two people were like running a train throughout the store.
Meep meep.
Right. They would like cut people off who were walking through the store, and like in these little scooters that they've got at the grocery store. And like I've got my little tiny cart, and I'm trying to like scoot around, get all the stuff I need just for me, like for dinner for my house, and they would cut me off, and 2 of them, and they had like 4 kids like in tow. So
I bet I can flip that.
Right.
It's gonna hurt, but I bet I can.
and there was one person who was probably like early 60s, something like that. Okay, you legitimate. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
But then the person behind her,
It's like once you start getting up there in age, I think you deserve that right.
right?
Because it's like, I don't know how your knees and hips are doing at this point. Like,
Exactly. But the person behind her was her granddaughter, because I heard them talking, and the person behind her would call her grandma. Well, she was probably younger than I am, and maybe 10 pounds heavier. Like, she wasn't a big person whatsoever. That's just lazy at that point.
Yeah.
That
No,
bothers me.
absolutely. Laziness is horrible across the board. Let's just leave it at that. I mean,
Right.
like it's one thing to kind of make jokes about it, like, oh, you know, I'm lazy. I haven't done my dishes in a week, you know,
Yeah.
or oh, I'm lazy. I haven't mown my yard in 2 weeks, you know. Blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. But then there's real lazy where you are taking one of those scooters. You don't know who's going to be coming through that door that needs one.
Right.
My grandmother used to ride a assisted. I'm not gonna say assisted living, but it's kind of like an assistance program bus.
Right. The bus, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
where they would pick up the elderly individuals in town and bring them directly to the store. They would give them an hour to shop, and then they'd just get back on the bus and they'd bring them right back to their door.
Right.
And it was run by the city. You know, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think up in the Chicagoland area they call it like the Pace Bus or something like that.
I think they call it something like that around here too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And like that's really cool. I would help my grandmother on and off that bus, all the time. Now, there were people on that bus that needed those scooters, and there are some weeks where I could look on that bus and be like, "Wow, they're gonna max out their scooters,"
Right.
because there's only like 8 in the neighborhood Walmart, and there are more than 8 people on that bus.
Well, the worst thing about where I was at was they only have 3. So
Oh,
these two
lovely.
people took up, and one I can make an argument for. But I'm like, come on, if you're younger or my age and you feel the need to just take a scooter, that's shitty.
Yeah.
Because I cannot tell you how many times I have gone to this store and went to walk around, and I would see an old person, you know, with a cane, just like barely getting through the door to get to
Yeah.
one of these scooters. Well, that is legitimate. Just because you feel lazy and because you're, you know, I'm 220, you know, 217, depending on the day. If you're 240, that doesn't mean that you get to ride a scooter. And actually, the worst thing this is what pissed me off more than anything was the fact that this person would park this scooter and get up to go get something, put it in the scooter, and then keep going in the scooter. I'm like, if you can get up long enough to get something, then
And not just that, like how many times I have to get up? Because I mean, you're using more strength to get up multiple times than you would be to walk through the store in general.
right, yeah,
Now, this is not taking a bash at anybody who legitimately needs these things. If you
Right.
legitimately need a scooter or you legitimately need help to do day-to-day things, this is not aimed at you.
no,
This is aimed at the people that are pretty much just giving people who need those things a bad name.
truth,
Like, there are people in their mid-20s that do need a scooter for some reason. Maybe they have some kind of a degenerative disease in their skeleton or something like that. You
Right.
know, like their joints are bad. Maybe they were born with something that is causing their body to age faster than it is. I actually had a family friend who he was only like 25, 30 years old, but
Right.
his body was aging. Like, he wasn't like Benjamin Button, or
Right,
he wasn't
yeah.
like Jack, that Robin Williams Disney movie from back in the day.
right,
He
yeah.
wasn't like that, but his body was literally processing information like he was middle-aged already.
Well,
Like,
and
he was
here's
just slowing down. His muscles were getting brittle. Like, he needed something like that.
well, and I have a buddy from college that he was hit by a car when he was 6, and he looked like he had like CP.
Mm-hmm.
And like he couldn't walk right. He would walk as much as he could, but he had his own, you know, chair and all that stuff, and he needed one. But and I understand that because he was maybe 2 years older than I was, and I understand. Yes, there's certain situations where you need that, but you can also tell by the attitude that they present as well.
Son of a
Man down. Because if you're at a grocery store, most of the people who need that realize that they, they're slower than most of the other people.
Yeah.
And they, have some sort of like decorum,
Yeah.
and respect for the fact that, hey, if I'm walking through with a cart, I'm moving faster than you, whatever. These people were literally cutting people off.
Yeah. I actually, my mother-in-law actually, she from time to time gets a cart. Not very often, like one of those scooter ones.
Right.
Not very often, but it's just when her knee is messed up. She actually had to have knee replacement surgery.
Right.
She's in her 50s.
Right.
So, I mean, there are some people that might look at that as like, oh, well, you're just being lazy. No, she's not. She actually had a knee replacement. And she legitimately needs it. And she still refuses to use it sometimes because she's like, I don't know if somebody else is going to come behind me and actually need it. Especially if there's only one scooter in there. She's not going to touch it. She's like, there could be an 85-year-old lady comes in 5 seconds after I roll through those doors that needs this cart.
Right.
And then she's stuck walking around. Not happening.
Well, and see, my grandma, she's one of those, like, people that absolutely despises using that. And I have seen her at the grocery store before, and I will, go take her cart and push it for her so that way she doesn't have to worry about it.
He picks her up like a sack of potatoes and throws her over his shoulders.
Yeah, but, I mean, that's one of my biggest pet peeves. And I saw that yesterday because me and John were talking about Walmart people. And Walmart people are the worst at that.
I actually used to make a joke about Walmart. Like, if I ever feel bad about myself, I just go to Walmart at 2 a.m.
Yeah, dude.
I'm like, well, at least I don't look like her. She has a beard.
So we had two questions. So let's answer these two questions. The first is, what is the worst thing you've ever ate because of politeness?
The worst thing I ever ate because I was being polite was when I was a child. I used to go over to a buddy of mine's house all the time. And once a week I would stay long enough to have dinner with their family. I was raised in a very conservative household, so my grandmother didn't really like me going too many places.
Right.
But she would allow me every Friday to stay long enough to have dinner and then just come home right after dinner.
Right.
Cool. There was one time, I still do not know what it is. She made this dish and dropped it in front of me. And did you ever watch The Emperor's New Groove growing up?
Yes. I
remember
love
that
movie.
scene?
It
remember
is
this
fucking
scene
hilarious.
with the bug where he hits it and it just pops open and he's like, that's kind of what happened. Like she dropped it she dropped it in front of me and this thing just like the steam just rolled up into my face. I was like, oh, nope, that's not happening. And then I looked at her and she was a sweet older lady. She really was. Like she had kids late in life. Sweet older lady. And I just kind of looked up at her. Well, eye level with her when I was sitting down.
Right.
And I was like, where the hell's my spoon? And I dug in and it tasted like a combination of mayonnaise and broccoli. Like it was horrible combination. Like I don't know what it was. It had the consistency of cat food.
Monkey brain surprise.
Like I had no idea what it was, but I'm just sitting there looking at it like, fuck my life. I'm 9 years old. I'm already like, yeah, I'm done with this.
I'll take two. Bite. Bite.
I'm like,
okay, I'll take a bite.
I got this. I finished my plate. I went home. I looked at my mom and I was like, I'm gonna go throw up. And she's like, well, why? And I told her about it. And I called my Gram's mom growing up. But she has a sense of humor. She laughed her ass off. And then made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So, it was all good.
I wouldn't say it's politeness. The first time I ever ate sushi, I puked because it was at a buffet. So, if anyone ever knows this, don't eat buffet sushi because it's not made by someone who knows what sushi is. All right?
His name is Mikey. He's 17 years old, still in high school, and he has a D average.
Right. So, I mean, Honestly, I can't remember anything. I'm fairly adventurous, and I know I've been in EMS long enough that I know that not everything that you're going to try to make is going to be the best in the world because you don't have that much time. And unfortunately, it kind of like bleeds over into my everyday life because you give me a plate of something that looks delicious, I can go to the most expensive place I've ever eaten at, and I'm just like, just shoveling it all in because I'm like, oh man, hold on, I'm not gonna get a call on this one, so why am I doing this? But it just kind of like, I always have that in the back of my head, and it sucks.
Get it in before my body rejects it.
What is the other question that was posted on the same thing was, what's the most depressing meal you've eaten? Or what would your last meal be?
Most depressing meal
Yeah.
was, I was raised in a larger city. I don't know if I've actually said what city I was raised in, so I'm not going to now, but I may have spilled the beans prior to this. I was raised by my grandmother, and she raised myself and my older sister on $1,100 a month. And in the city I grew up in,
Damn.
that was rent.
Right.
So we lived in a real crappy apartment, and we always had food on our plate and a roof over our head, but the food wasn't always scrumptious looking.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And the most depressing meal I ever had growing up was Spam and beets.
Oh, I hate Spam.
And dude, to this day, when my wife goes grocery shopping, I don't care how tight on money we are. I looked her right in the eye when we first started dating and said, if you ever make me Spam and beets, I'm not eating it. I don't care if it hurts your feelings. I don't care if you cry about it. I am not eating it. I cannot. I can't. It makes my stomach turn just thinking about it now.
The texture of Spam itself is just horrible.
Well, and see, I know people that love it.
I'm
like,
how are you that fucked up in life?
See, well, and another thing, I've told people about this before, and they're like, well,
mom.
Spam is an expensive canned meat. And I'm like, yeah, down here.
Well, my thing is, like,
I mean,
I've eaten spam in my life, and I fucking hate it. Like, the texture, like, I can feel it on my tongue right now.
Yeah.
Like, once you eat it, you never get that away from you. It doesn't leave your mind.
Yeah, honestly, I always tell people, they're like, oh, I love Spam. I'm like, really? Because in my opinion, you basically just stuck sawdust into a can full of pig lard, and that is what you got.
Exactly.
That's
exactly
what you got.
what
And
it feels like.
The same people I talked to about that, they gave me shit because I love hot dogs. And I'm like, okay, dude, hot dogs are the shit.
Dude,
so
at
don't
least
even
it's
go
got
there.
pork in it. You know that there's
kinda.
Well, pork and flies and, other things like that.
Hector fell into the machine. Keep making
There's
them.
a finger. Fuck it. Whatever. The bone's just going to make it at least a little more solid. I think... I don't know. Like, I love cooking. Like, that is one of my favorite things to do is cook. And I make my own recipes just because, I like to experiment with stuff, whatever. But when I was in college, I remember that I would get the 10-pack of ramen noodles, and I would just have ramen noodles all the fucking time. But you learn a way to make ramen noodles taste better. I mean, you put some cheese in there, like mix that stuff up.
I'm surprised there haven't been inmates that release like prison cookbooks. Because, dude, like...
I think there have been.
Dude, there are some of the inmates that I had to watch, man. I'm just, like, watching the stuff they'd make out of their hot pot. And for anyone that's never been to prison, doesn't know anybody who's ever been in prison, has never talked to anyone in prison, a hot pot is basically like this plastic contraption that it heats water. And it's not enough to boil it. It's, like, just enough to soften up ramen noodles.
Right.
But I have seen inmates do some of the coolest shit. Like, I actually watched one of them bring out a peanut butter chocolate fudge cake that they made in their hot pot for another inmate because it was their birthday. And I'm not gonna lie, they're not allowed to be doing that traffic and trade and shit. They're not.
Right.
I was so impressed by it, I let it go. I was like, huh.
All right, let me ask you this, because they asked this.
My wife's lasagna. My last meal would be my wife's lasagna. I'm not even trying to get brownie points. She's got the best lasagna I've ever had.
I think mine. All right, last meal. If I had 3 hours to live, and I knew that I had 3 hours to live, I think what I would do was I would get a...
All you can eat pancakes.
No. What I would do is I'd get a bottle of scotch, 18-year-old scotch. I would get a... let's go with a 2-inch thick, 10-ounce sirloin steak.
Okay.
Grilled. And I think I would have to do baked beans with a side of slow cooked ribs.
With my lasagna, I would have to go with my favorite alcoholic beverage, which is actually Smith and Forge.
Hard cider?
Yeah, it's a hard apple cider. I mean, it's not one of those things, or I mean, it can get you drunk. It's not one of those drinks where you drink strictly like, oh, I'm gonna get smashed off of these.
Right.
Now, usually I drink enough of them. I do.
Right.
But but I just think they taste really, really good because I love apple cider, and it literally just tastes like apple cider. It really does. Like, you can't even taste in my opinion, I cannot taste the alcohol aftertaste.
Right.
Until I get down to like that last swallow in the bottom of the can.
Yeah.
Like that hard drink in the bottom of every beer can. that's when I taste all the hops and all the whatever else is in there. I'm almost like, whoop, there it went.
Well, see, my buddy brought over a bottle of 18-year-old Scotch whiskey. Oh my god, so smooth.
Yeah.
Like, I love whiskey, but you know, most of them have that whole brah, you know,
that
afterwards.
burn, that
Yeah.
real nice burn on the way down.
But an 18-year-old Scotch whiskey just is smooth all the way.
I've actually tried to explain that to people, even drinkers. I'm like, there is a difference between whiskey and Scotch. And
Yeah.
they're like, well, what's the difference? I'm like, legitimate Scotch is from Scotland for one.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, and it goes down way smoother.
Yeah.
It really was like you can buy a bottle of Evan and get that burn if you really want
Oh yeah.
to.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, if you want some really decent Scotch, like, you're spending a pretty penny. Like, that shit's not cheap.
Oh no. Definitely. Definitely.
Like, I'm actually of Scottish descent, and when I go to my family reunion that they hold around here, I don't even know some of these people. Like, we're just distant cousins from each other. We're all descended from from the same Scottish clan. And one of the guys, like one of the head guys that sets up the tent and everything like that during it's a Scottish games, and you're allowed to bring your family tree and have like a reunion there.
Right.
You know. And if I wasn't driving the first time I met him, he actually had a bottle of scotch that was something like 50 to 65 years old.
Dude.
And he was like, you want to drink with me? And I was like, I would love to, but I won't stop. And I got to drive home, and I'm an hour away from home. I'm not going to make it home safe. Like, even if I'm driving straight, or even if I'm going the speed limit, cops are going to see me.
All right. We got to wrap this bitch
All right.
up.
Yep.
We've been here way too long right
Yeah,
now.
we've been doing this for like 2
It's
hours,
fun,
so
though.
my wife's going to kill me.
All right.
Oh, shit. Son of a bitch.
Watch your feet, bro.
I forgot it was there.
All right. So, I got to shout out these people because Black Rifle Coffee has been cool enough that they've given us a 15% off discount code. So, if you like coffee, as most of you overly caffeinated people do, use the discount code 107 off duty, and you will get 15% off. So, do that. Yeah, Medic Element, they do morale patches, stickers, t-shirts. They also donate most of their proceeds to first responder mental health things. If you want buy one get one free on stickers, use the discount code MEDIC18, MEDIC18, and go do that because it's awesome. Please follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/offduty. Our direct link to our streaming thing is offduty.podbean.com. If you guys have any more questions, send them to us at 107offduty@gmail.com.
I recommend Podbean because that's the one I use. It's pretty cool.
All right, guys. We love you. Bye.
Bye.